that had occurred in previous times. So for this reason, probably security forces, intelligence forces, and the police forces, they have to be more prepared and be one step ahead of these terrorist groups. Every time you come up with some kind of plan on how to deal with terrorism, they seem to be one step ahead of us. With all our sophisticated technology and know-how, unless we put our brains together to come to be one step ahead of these terrorist forces, we are not going to win. Now they are taking it at a completely new level. And this should be a caution and warning for the entire world.
Well, over the last few minutes that we have here, Dr. Paruchuri, let's look at those four client groups that you mentioned, and exactly why these terrorists are concerned about these three groups. I mean these four groups. If it had such an impact on these groups, why are they concerned about the Jews, for example? Why are they concerned about the common man, and etc.? Do those four areas and give us that kind of information.
In the minds of terrorists, these are the groups that for some reason have done their world wrong. With, of course, we know the Palestinian Jewish issue. So if they can't fight them at home, it seems like they are willing to fight them at some other spot. And if you can't bring, with all the security that we have, your terror to the western quarters, you can still fight it on some other land where there's likelihood of security likelihood is far less. And then even you hit the business world, it gives them a sense of power. And if you pressure the common man with a terrorist activity, the common man is wanting to see that the issues are resolved. So this four-pronged approach, it seemed like, was very well thought out by the terrorist group.
Now, what about the United States? I mean, where do we stand in reference to this? Because, and I say that because we have a new administration that's coming in, and there will have to be new policies and et cetera. What would you see as an even-handed kind of situation in terms of how we resolve that? How do we become involved in that? Because now Afghanistan is not far from this entire controversy.
Exactly.
And we're talking about sending more troops into Afghanistan and et cetera. What do we do in reference to this?
First of all, I want you to understand both India and Pakistan have nuclear powers. So you are treading, you know, on a very dangerous ground, and unless you put enormous amount of pressure on both countries to resolve it, we might have a bigger problem than what we have at hand. So it is in the interest of United States to put all pressure possible to see that at least Pakistan gets rid of these terrorist groups and not use Pakistan as an operating ground for these terrorist groups. It is the same with Afghanistan. The amount of pressure that one can bring on Afghanistan as well as Pakistan to see that these terrorist groups are not going to be using their soil to operate. And this will be in the interest of United States also. And of course, since United States being a major power in the world, I feel that its diplomacy should operate forcefully for these countries to deal with these new problems.
In other words, bring about some kind of reconciliation in terms of dealing with this problem, and not to, because it would be almost impossible for us to be successful in Afghanistan unless we are able to, in a real sense, solve the problems. Because some of the people that are in Afghanistan are also trying to move into Pakistan.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Yes, Pakistan has a new problem of getting refugees. It's already a poor country. Where are you going to feed all these people? Common citizen from both sides is affected terribly, and this continued terror and dealing with terror puts less money into their treasury to operate other programs that are necessary for its citizenry. So
well, now, in a real sense, we have a very, very difficult situation in terms of the war in Afghanistan. The amount of money that we're using there could be used for some other purpose. For example, you might have a Marshall. Would it be possible to think in terms of a Marshall Plan for that particular area dealing with Afghanistan, and perhaps even join some areas of Pakistan in, to provide financial resources for these nations to develop, which would be less expensive than trying to provide the military resources for them to fight one another.
It is time really we came up with another strategy rather than military strategy. Afghanistan has been under military somehow involvement with military, with the Soviets for the longest time, and then with the United States. So it is, and it didn't work. And it is time we try to use some other kind of diplomacy of building a nation. Building a nation with education and all other opportunities. Perhaps in that way we can keep terror at bay.
Very good. And of course, Dr. Paruchuri, let me thank you for bringing by this excellent information dealing with this issue and some of the possibilities that we've been able to talk about here, that you've been able to introduce. And I'm certain that these things will be heard. And of course, let me also encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments, and also to direct our audience to the site YouTube/Dr. J, Haney, for most of the information that you find in these particular programs. And let me encourage you to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.